in 2023. The mortician was sentenced in June to 20 years in federal prison.
Accountability.
President Trump's cabinet meeting today, all of it before the cameras. The president continuing his vow to crack down on crime, and with this warning here.
Anybody murders something in the Capitol, capital punishment, capital punishment. If somebody kills somebody in the Capitol, Washington, D.C., we're going to be seeking the death penalty.
How he also responded today to California's Gavin Newsom and Illinois' JP Pritzker. We are live in Chicago tonight. Plus, is there a new Trump card at the Fed? The president firing one of Joe Biden's appointees. Does this set the stage to go after Jay Powell? Peter Navarro with me here on the Hill. Also tonight, say what? A new mandate from the Department of Transportation. What the agency is now saying all truck drivers need to do: speak English. But first tonight, here from the Hill, I guess you could say it was back to back. After roughly 2 hours of events Monday before the media, President Trump today holding a 3-hour and 17-minute cabinet meeting. All of it televised. As you might imagine, you basically could have picked whatever issue you wanted, and it received presidential attention today. But really, two themes dominating throughout all of this: the president's continued crackdown on crime and his firing of a voting member at the Federal Reserve. Peter Navarro with me in a moment, but we begin tonight with our Kelly Meyer live at the White House. Kelly, this is 2 days now where the president was before the cameras for hours.
Yeah, really capturing the attention there for over 3 hours, as you said, Blake. And President Trump floating in that meeting the idea of capital punishment in our nation's capital for those that commit murder. That was one big takeaway from this cabinet meeting. He said states will make their own decision, but in Washington, D.C., prosecutors would seek the death penalty. He says we have no choice. Take a listen.
I don't know if we're ready for it in this country. But where you have it, it is, we have no choice. So in D.C. and Washington, states are going to have to make their own decision. But if somebody kills somebody, like you could have been killed, very lucky you didn't get killed, it's the death penalty.
So D.C. doesn't have the death penalty. Capital punishment was repealed by the D.C. Council in the 1980s, and D.C. hasn't had an execution since the 1950s. But it all comes as President Trump continues to tout that there have been no murders in D.C. in the last 2 weeks, as he has taken control of the police force here. Blake.
All right, Kelly, so that was a part of the 197 minutes. Another part of the question and answer there was about Lisa Cook and this big move from the president and what it might mean for your money.
Yeah, exactly. President Trump today really dismissing the legal challenge from Lisa Cook, saying you always have legal fights. This was after Lisa Cook said she would sue the president over his move to fire her. Here's this, and we'll talk on the other side.
You abide by a court decision?
I abide by the court, yeah. I abide by the court. Yes, that's enough. That's enough.
Mr.
Go ahead.
President.
So here's how we got here. President Trump's housing regulator accused Cook of mortgage fraud. She hasn't been charged with wrongdoing, though. And Cook's lawyer, Abby Lowell, said that President Trump, quote, has no authority to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. His attempt to fire her, they say, is based solely on the referral letter, lacks any factual or legal basis, and we will be filing a lawsuit challenging this legal action. So Cook was appointed to the Fed's board by former President Joe Biden in 2022, and that nomination was opposed by many Republicans, Blake.
All right, our Kelly Meyer live tonight there on the North Lawn. Kelly, thank you. So this was one of the big issues, really one of the big issues going into the day before that major cabinet meeting. And just a little while ago, I spoke with senior counselor to the president, Peter Navarro, about what could come next and about that big decision from the president. Joining us tonight here on the Hill once again, Peter Navarro with us from the North Lawn of the White House. Peter, thanks for being with us. We heard a little bit from the president today.
It's a pleasure, bud.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Lay out the case, if you can, for me, from the administration's point of view, as to why you believe that Lisa Cook can be fired.
Well, let's see.
before I joined this administration, when she got hired, I made the strong case then that she was totally unqualified for the job, that it was just one of those woke appointments by Biden, and her tenure on the board has clearly proved that. But the firing is not about that. The firing is about alleged breaking of the law in a very serious way. And I would just say, from a personal point of view, like you know, and I think a lot of people out there know, I went to prison. I went there for defending the constitutional separation of powers and executive privilege. But there was a couple of people there who were actually there for mortgage fraud and loan fraud, who were taken away from their families. They not only were put in prison for a long time, the government took away their assets as well and made them pay restitution. And these are serious crimes. So if, in fact, Lisa Cook is guilty of what it may be mortgage fraud, she's got no business being on that. Now, right at this point,
so are you good? Are you good then, Peter? With are you good then with accuse, fire, and see what happens?
I think I'm very good with this. Look, this stuff came out. She knows whether she did it or not. If she knows, she should step down now. If she wants to fight it, fine. Let's fight it. But she doesn't belong there. This is a very serious allegations, and she needs to be out of there.
I wonder, Peter, if this is laying the groundwork for Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, because as you know, the Supreme Court ruled that Powell or any Fed chair cannot be fired because you disagree with policy or decisions, but they can be fired for cause. Yeah. And so if the administration believes that Lisa Cook can be fired here for cause, does this sort of set up the administration's argument potentially down the road that Jay Powell could be fired for cause as it relates to the Fed headquarters?
No, I don't think that necessarily follows. I mean, he's a lame duck right now. We're putting Stephen Mirren on the board. He'll join two others there who, for the first time since 1990, dissented against Powell's opinion with respect to whether or not to lower rates. Powell did not do that. And Powell should see the tea leaves here. I mean, interestingly enough, he's beginning grudgingly to come over to the idea that he shouldn't be holding rates up because of tariffs. That was what the Jackson Hole speech was all about. But no, I don't think the two are related. But Lisa Cook, look, a serious matter. And again, I'll tell you, that's a serious crime. I mean, Americans, you got to understand, people go to prison for that. I know because I was in prison with several of them. And it's like a serious matter.
Here's what the president said in the cabinet meeting today. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
We'll have a majority very shortly, so that'll be great. Once we have a majority, housing is going to swing, and it's going to be great. People are paying too high an interest rate. That's the only problem with housing.
Once we have a majority, he's talking about of Fed voting members, that'll be great. If and when that happens, Peter, how big of an interest rate cut are we talking about?
Well, let's talk about why. Yeah, let's talk about that. My judgment is that we're at least 100 basis points above where we should be. And as a macroeconomist who followed this kind of stuff for years, the first thing you look at is the fact that we're over 4%. Europe's only at 2%. That's a huge margin. China's at 1.5 and Japan's at 0.5. That sets up all sorts of arbitrage. It sets all sorts of currency issues. It basically artificially pushes up our dollar. That leads to a few of our exports sold, more imports bought, a bigger trade deficit. And then the general problem, as I've argued extensively in several op-eds, is that holding these rates artificially high because Powell wrongly believes that tariffs are somehow going to push up inflation, and he's admitted that he's wrong on that now, that creates tremendous cost to the American people.
Well, we have seen inflation rates ticking somewhat higher. I know it's not substantially,
but data, and if you look at the data, It's not driven by tariffs, okay? So the way people cherry pick the data, they see these things come out all the time, the trends down, and then you get one little thing in a report that suggests, oh, maybe it's going back up, and then that's like a moment to seize on keeping the rates up by more than 100 basis points. No, that dog won't hunt. By the way, I'm an advocate of this. I don't know where the Fed got into this idea that their job is to be like a careful orchestrator of interest rates, where you signal these rate cuts like a year in advance, and you tell them we're going to do this in October. That's not the way it's supposed to work. The Fed basically should let the markets interpret what the data is, look at things, and not be afraid to lower rates 25 basis points or 50 basis points. And then a few months later, they're wrong and they want to do caution, you go back up. The whole point is that uncertainty of the Fed is good for the markets, and we don't have that anymore. So this whole Fed policy is insane. On the majority thing, Blake, seven members, including Powell. Go. You got it.
No, I was going to give you the last word real quick.
Well, it's 7 members now. If we got 2 that are gone, 2 on Trump's side now. Marin coming in, that's 3. Lisa Cook gone, that's 4. That's a majority. Yep. We're not looking for putting our thumb on the scale. We're looking for smart people to do the right thing. We don't have that now. We got a bunch of ideologues there that were appointed by Biden trying to screw Donald John Trump.
All right, we'll leave it there. Peter Navarro, thank you, sir. We'll talk again.
Take care, brother.
Tonight, joining me now here on the Hill, NewsNation political contributor, the host of the Sean Spicer podcast show, Sean Spicer, and NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist, Kurt Bardella. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Sean, there was a lot going on today. You're fired up on this Lisa Cook issue. It's, I guess, somewhat personal.
Well, look, I went to court. President Biden was the first time in history that he dismissed members of the Service Academy. We went to court. The Biden administration fought all the way through the appeals process that the president has the absolute authority to remove people. Now they don't like it because it's their people. But the bottom line is that the Biden administration created history in court law by arguing in the affirmative that the president had absolute authority. In this case, it's not even that. The statute's very clear. He just has to prove cause. Cause people get fired for at work all the time. This is not a conviction, and where the media is gaslighting people, saying she hasn't been convicted. It doesn't say convicted of a crime, misdemeanor, felony. It just says for cause.
But you can accuse someone of anything.
I know I can, but here's the difference. There's a big difference between, I actually have the receipts. You have her signing an Atlanta mortgage form and a Michigan form at the same time, declaring both were her primary residence. That's mortgage fraud. She used them both as rentals. She got a lower interest rate, and she probably had to put less of a down payment. This is a woman who's on the bank that sets the interest rates, literally committed mortgage fraud to do this, and then wants to set the rates for the rest of us. Give me a break. That's cause. She should be going to jail, not just losing her job.
Kurt, the other big issue was the president on crime. And he is going down. We heard from him 2 hours yesterday, 3 hours today. And I just wonder, Kurt, if he feels that he has your party in a box on this issue.
If he does, it's a box of Democrats' own making. We saw this playbook with immigration. We're seeing it now with crime. They have been on the wrong side of those issues for years now. And every time Donald Trump, the Republicans, very smartly, I might add, send up this flare, Democrats chase it and end up defending criminals, defending drug dealers, defending murderers.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. Like I brought this up on air, I don't know, 10 days ago. I said I felt like this is moving down the path of Republicans saying, and you support what?
Well, this is like the immigration. I'm just going to say, Kurt's right, though. This is an opportunity. This were easy. Don't stand up for criminals or people who break the law. Just say, this is one area where you agree with Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton's on the record. Barack Obama was on record. Bill Clinton was on record, all supporting law and order and safe borders and being against criminals. And suddenly now the modern Democratic Party is on the side of people who break the law.
So what should be, what would you say to Sean, Kurt, and what do you think the messing should be here?
I think that the messaging should be very simple here. Donald Trump is going to do what he's going to do, and the American people are going to have to decide whether they agree with it or not. If they think it's executive overreach, they'll let him know at the polls. In the meantime, let's focus on the issues that hit you in your own backyard. Let's focus on whether or not you have more money in your bank account than you did a year ago, if things are cheaper at the grocery store, if inflation is going down, if gas prices are going down, and if your kids are safe at the schools that they're going back to this week. That's the message Democrats should stick to. That's in a much better wheelhouse than defending criminals.
Yeah, and it's not there, and you got to wonder if and when it changes. Kurt Bardella back later in the show. Sean Spicer back later as well. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Still to come. How about this from the administration today? No English, no driving. The Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, cracking down on truck drivers.
We are not going to tolerate states that don't comply with the rules that come from this department.
What was just announced after a deadly crash in Florida involving an illegal immigrant. And have you seen this? That portrait of President Trump draped over a federal building. He's not the first one to do it, though, here in D.C. We'll explain. I thank you for being with us tonight. Lots going on in this town, as always. I'm Blake Burman, back on the other side in 4 minutes.
$9.
There was a lot of press that complained to us that we were being unfair to people, that we were being mean to people. And what we said was, no, this is a safety issue. We need to make sure that those who are driving big rigs, semis, can understand the road signs. And if they can't do that, that creates a significant issue for the traveling public.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy today giving an ultimatum to California, New Mexico, and Washington State. Enforce English language requirements for commercial drivers or lose federal funding. It follows a deadly crash in the state of Florida earlier this month involving a truck driver who allegedly made an illegal U-turn into oncoming traffic. 3 people died in that crash. The driver entered the country illegally in 2018 and is now in the custody of immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Joining me now is the Republican congressman from the Sunshine State, Jimmy Patronis, who's also a member of the House Transportation Committee. Congressman, nice to have you back here on the Hill. We heard from the Transportation Secretary today about this policy. Is it good policy as you see it?
It is good policy. I like to point out to people, if you take the airline industry, any airport you fly into anywhere in the world, every pilot must know how to speak English. They have lives in their hands every time they fly that equipment. This is no different how we should be treating our trucking industry, our buses, trains, you name it. They need to be able to be proficient in English to make sure lives are always safe.
I'm looking at English language proficiency violations by license plate. These are the top states where it's happened in just the past 24 months, the most citations. Texas, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and your state of Florida. Those are red states politically, blue states politically, the largest states in this country. And it makes me wonder if the states and the leaders within those states have to do something about this.
No, it's going to be. Yeah, look, I totally agree. In Florida, we've already pushed it where you cannot get a driver's license if you're illegal. That law's been passed years ago. So every state, as they begin to enforce those laws, they're proactive with those laws. We will have that as the law of the land where English is the only language that has been spoken if you're behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler.
I'm wondering, though, Congressman, if the administration also needs to consider some other issues as well in this field. Square this for me if you can, because I know this has been an issue, and I was looking it up today. The trucking shortage, it's up to about 80,000 or so, a shortage of truck drivers. And then the industry is also seeing layoffs. I looked at some headlines today. 8 more trucking companies go bankrupt, 2 shut down. Mass layoffs hit freight-related firms, over 3,000 jobs cut. Tariffs are having an impact. Should more attention be paid here?
Well, I think some of this is how you're going to balance out the future of transportation in the United States. We've got some priorities that we're going to be focused on, and as tariffs are adjusted, settled, incorporated into the doing business. This is why the segment you had just a minute ago about lowering interest rates is so critical, because you've got businesses that want to expand, but if they got a tariff that is challenging some of their imported goods and they want to expand, a lower interest rate will help them borrow money to make that financial commitment. So again, all this is
or
a
you
little
could
bit
also
of
just point the blame
challenge.
and point the finger at tariffs, right? I guess for the industry, you could do that too.
I don't necessarily point it at tariffs. I think tariffs are going to be a roadmap to get some truth amongst the trade that takes place globally. Where we have got an imbalance, we should correct some of that. I think some of this, again, there's been a little bit of a dust up. The dust will settle. The industries will start to take advantage of the environment.
All right, Congressman Petronis, live with us tonight there from his home state of Florida. Thank you, sir.
Take care. Thank you for having me.
We'll catch you again soon. All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill. Other side of the break, President Trump versus the Illinois Governor JP Pritzker. The political feud heating up.
No one wants them to come, that crime is down.
And he goes about Trump, we don't need his help. Chicago is the worst. These places are really bad.
And on it goes when the Hill returns.
.com.
6:30 here in Washington tonight. Quite the scene today inside the White House. A cabinet meeting lasting 197 minutes. More than 3 hours, the president's longest on-camera appearance in term number 2. And when it was all said and done, one thing became clear, or at least it's clear to us at this point. The president thinks crime is a winning issue.
I think it's going to be a big subject for the midterms, and I think the Republicans are going to do really well.
As part of his offensive against Democratic governors, the president today called on the California governor, Gavin Newsom, to ask him for the federal government's help. As for the Illinois governor, JP Pritzker, this is what he had to say.
They're going to fight me. Like this slob of a governor you have in Illinois. This poor guy got thrown out of his business by his family. And he goes about Trump, we don't need his help. Chicago is the worst. These places are really bad.
So that's the description from the president tonight. One of the outstanding questions, if and when the president might send the National Guard into the Windy City. That's where we find our Alex Capriello live this evening. Alex?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. We're hearing both city and state leaders push back against President Trump's threats to actually send the National Guard right here to Chicago. They're both saying it's all just political theater and a way for him to actually squash his political rivals. As for Illinois Governor JP Pritzker, he's actually taking a look at some of the most recent crime stats from both Chicago police and the FBI, saying that's the reason why the National Guard is not welcome here. Take a listen.
What we are doing in the state right now is making sure that the president and those folks in Washington who are thinking about sending troops to on the ground in a major American city is that they understand that no one wants them to come.
The fact of the matter is crime is down in almost every major category here in Chicago. As for the mayor, Brandon Johnson, he says the National Guard, or even police for that matter, are not going to solve any sort of crime crisis here in this city. Instead, he's calling for additional investments into youth programs that maybe target violence prevention. Take a listen to him.
We're not going to police our way out of this. Policing alone cannot solve the historic disinvestment. Policing is not going to put food on the table of people. Policing will not ensure that there's a neighborhood school that children can walk to.
And at the very end of that very long cabinet meeting, we heard President Trump say that he would much rather have the governors come to him, ask for help, ask for them to send in the National Guard, rather than him sending in on his own. At the very same time, our very own Kelly Meyer asked DHS Kristi Noem about whether or not ICE is going to be coming here to Chicago. She says strike teams are imminent. Blake?
Imminent. All right, Alex Capriello, live tonight in Chicago. Alex, thank you. Meantime, Republicans in California are fighting back on another issue. Redistricting. Republican leaders announcing they filed an emergency petition before that state's Supreme Court. Now, their plea comes as state leaders from Indiana meeting at the White House today. And NewsNation has told the Vice President, J.D. Vance, addressed the group on, quote unquote, many different topics, as Indiana could potentially pursue redistricting as well. With us now, once again, back here on the Hill, he is the Republican from the state of California, Kevin Kiley. Congressman, I know this is a big deal for you. You're pushing back on this. It feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Greg Abbott three under the bus there in the state of California, and Indiana might do so as well.
Well, Gavin Newsom is the one who's creating problems for our state. I mean, regardless of what's happening elsewhere, Californians deserve to have fair elections and fair representation. Californians have voted on 3 separate occasions to say we do not want politicians drawing their own district lines. We want this done by an independent commission. And it's Gavin Newsom who's trying to overturn the will of voters and blow up our state constitution in order to take us backwards to this era of partisan gerrymandering. Now, I've been clear that I don't like what's going on in other states. I don't think this should be happening anywhere. I've introduced a bill to make sure it doesn't happen anywhere. But nevertheless, what's happening in California is unique in that it goes directly against the will of our voters, our Constitution, and the Independent Citizens Commission we have.
Do you worry that this then goes to, say, Indiana, and then all of a sudden it's just snowball effect and you're even in more trouble in your home state as a Republican?
Well, I worry about it for the whole country. I don't think this is good for it to happen anywhere. And yeah, I do think that you're going to have this mutually assured destruction where you have one state after another that is redrawing their lines just for the purpose of gaining a political advantage. And so where does this end? Are we just going to have kind of rolling redistricting from now on where the ground is constantly shifting beneath our feet? But by the time you get to know a community you represent, that community is tossed out of your district. This is not the way it's supposed to work. So that's why I've called for a armistice in this redistricting war.
An armistice.
It shouldn't be happening in Texas. It shouldn't be happening in California. It shouldn't be happening anywhere. I think we'd all be better off if we just said, let's do this at the beginning of the decade like we're supposed to.
You mentioned Gavin Newsom, as did I, as did the president. He's in the news often. As you know, you are in California. Here's what the president said today about another major issue that's being talked about, not only nationally, but in your home state. Here's the president. I'll get your reaction.
It would be so smart. Gavin Newsom called me up, say, you know what, we have a big problem. We have the Olympics coming up. We want to do well. We have tremendous problems on crime and other things, and would love some help.
Do you think the governor should call up the president there?
I think he should, yeah. I think that he should be very grateful for any help because we do have a huge crime problems in many of our cities. And with a situation like the Olympics, it's going to be a challenge. Just look at what happened with these riots just a couple of months ago. Out of control riots, officers being attacked. The president sent in the guard, and Newsom, rather than welcoming the help, tried to resist him in any way possible, tried to actually blame the National Guard for the violence, which was absurd. And then went and filed a lawsuit that even a Biden-appointed judge threw out of court. And by the way, if the governor has some sort of issue with the National Guard being used to protect citizens, then you might ask him, why is it that he himself actually sent the National Guard into San Francisco just last year, claiming that this was what was needed in order to clean up the open-air drug markets and fentanyl markets that we have in San Francisco. Now, he did it in a fairly token way that didn't really make a difference, but it's something that the governor himself has done before. So I think Californians are saying enough with the political theatrics. The president or the governor just wants to try to fight against the president however we can. But actually, if we had some collaboration, I think that would be in the best interest of all of our residents.
All right, we'll leave it there. Kevin Kiley, Republican from California, in the middle of it all. Congressman, thanks. We'll talk soon.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right, still to come. We've been mentioning there. Look, it was a 3-hour cabinet meeting today. We quite literally can't show you all of it in a 1-hour show, but we've picked up some of the key parts today, and the panel will get to it on the other side.
So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, you know, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop crime.
Here's the interesting thing. The president has talked about that word twice in the last couple days. Why is it? Sean Spicer, rest of the panel, other side of the break when The Hill returns.
A NewsNation exclusive, a secret government experiment exposed.
My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
An alleged cover-up spanning generations.
Is there a sense of betrayal here?
Definitely.
NewsNation investigates tomorrow, 7/6 Central.
Find a place.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill. So between the president calling in the National Guard to, as he puts it, protect our nation's cities, to taking stakes, a stake rather, of 10% in American business, worth billions of dollars, as we just saw with Intel, to painting our nation's elite universities into corners so tight that they either give in to the administration's demands or possibly lose hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. The president with this message today, for example, to the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon.
Linda, how about it? And we want nothing less than $500 million from Harvard.
And with all this, the D word starting to be thrown around. Now, in Republican circles, that typically is Democrat when you talk about politics. But Donald Trump not being accused of that. Instead, he's being accused of being a dictator. And the president actually, not only did he mentioned it yesterday, but he also addressed the label again today.
The line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, you know, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop crime.
So is the president merely exerting executive power that is his right to flex as president, or is he pushing the limits of checks and balances? Full panel here with me now. Sean Spicer back with us, News Nation political contributor, host of the Sean Spicer Show podcast. Aaron McGuire is a Republican strategist. Scott Bolden, News Nation political contributor, and we don't think any less of him that he's not with us in person. We thank him for being with us remotely. Kurt Bardella, News Nation contributor, Democratic strategist. Bardella, hang in there with us. Spicer, I'm going to start with you because I found it fascinating that the president addressed this whole dictator thing twice in the past 2 days.
First of all, I just got to say, I love these cabinet meetings. The first one, we've had now 7 of these in 7 months. I've loved this accountability. You hear from every single person around that table what they're doing for the American people. I actually really enjoy them. It's a sense of accountability and transparency. The president wanted to...
Some of it, though, would say... Some of it's like dear leader kind of stuff. Like,
but guess what?
Blah, 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 blah.
But you know what? You can't just show up without an answer. And so this is like, you know, in college I used to hide in the back and say, don't call on me. Okay. But you can't get away from Trump as he goes around that table. What have you done? And remember, you only have 30 days to go back. So every time there's a cabinet meeting, you're accountable. Look, as for the comments today, I think there are things that sometimes might get under his skin and he wants to address. But the line is, I think he made a good point. You know what? I bet all of you guys who think this is happening enjoy being able to walk safely down the street. Because at the end of the day, people vote on 2 things: how they feel economically and how they feel safety-wise. And right now, the president's addressing both.
Well, bringing in the military isn't making people feel safe. As the only former prosecutor, on this panel, I can tell you it takes more than police and more than people being intimidated by a militaristic presence. The D.C. Police Department makes arrests every day, quite frankly, so it's not like you don't have the fight of crime. The $100 million bill that was taken from the D.C. budget to put more police and to put more judges in and to do public-private partnerships with community organizations and more police presence, if you will, makes people feel safe, but it brings down crime too.
Kurt, I'm going to bring Kurt in, and Aaron, I'm going to get you in a second, but you were saying off the top of the show, you think the messaging on this is off.
Mm-hmm. For Democrats, absolutely it is. Again, if you are against people being locked up, thrown away because they're criminals, and if you're, and I'm not saying Scott's saying that, I'm saying just Democrats in general, their gut reaction whenever these things happen with Trump is, this is horrible, this is dictatorship, this is going too far. But they ignore the underlying issue. When you see homeless people in parks where you want to take your kids, there's a problem there. When you see these long-term, long-standing issues that haven't been addressed by anyone in public office at the local, state, federal level, at some point as a parent, you just want it to be taken care of, so you don't have to worry about taking your kids to a park and seeing this kind of stuff. I can personally attest to that. That happened not that long ago on a road trip on the way to Colorado. We stopped in Santa Fe at the park across the street from the hotel. There were homeless people. There were people drinking. There were people doing drugs. That's not the environment we want our kids in. And if the only person willing to stand up and say, I'm going to do something, and the other side says, well, that's just too radical, you lose normal people along the way.
You and Sean know Trump and comms and how he thinks about things as well as anybody that's really out there. And it's stood out to me, Aaron, that Trump was before the cameras for 2 hours yesterday and 197 minutes today. I've said that number a few times. And it just makes me think that he believes that this is a winning issue for him.
It is a winning issue. Crime is a winning issue for the president. Look at how easy it is to paint this narrative for Republicans and for the American people right now. Republicans and Donald Trump at the helm of the Republican Party want to make communities safer. Democrats say no. Republicans want to enforce legal immigration and get rid of criminal illegal immigrants. Democrats side with Abrego Garcia, who's already been adjudicated. They're picking criminals time after time instead of supporting the American people. So yes, Trump is in very strong standing to message on this, and the work he's doing with the federalization that he is right now to not only enforce the law but make communities safer is one with the stats that are bearing out to show it's working that will resonate with people.
I also wonder if the last few weeks, with the meeting with Putin and Zelensky and all that, it didn't land, it didn't play out the way that he thought it would, and now this is the issue that he's pivoted to.
No, I never believe that line of theory from anybody that Trump is doing something as a distraction technique. This is a man who has been foot on the gas since he got in the door of this administration, and that's not changing.
To be honest with you, I don't really care. I mean, my point is, no, but what I mean by that is, look, we're all here in D.C., just steps from Union Station. I spent my late 90s living a block from there. Used to be able to go in, and then it became literally scary to go to Union Station just to get things. The idea that Trump's taking this serious, and here's the thing, Scott, the bottom line is D.C. has done everything to decriminalize things, to hide and manipulate and cover up the statistics of really what's going on. Every single person who's visited or lives in this city knows that it's not safe. Every person who visited or lives in Chicago knows it's not safe. Every person who's visited or lives in New York. So when the Democrats claim that there's not a problem, then they are not only that, they're gaslighting. It's the same thing they did with immigration.
You're
one thing
saying
not to
that,
be for it.
I don't think the Democrats are saying that. At least many Democrats aren't falling into that trap to say we don't have a crime problem. The
Apparently
issue
not
with
the
Donald
leaders.
Trump, well, I can't speak for the leaders per se, but it's how Donald Trump is doing it. If Donald Trump called up the governors or the mayors of these blue cities and red cities that have a higher crime rate than D.C.
What city? Wait, hold on. What city are we in charge of?
You're in charge of plenty of cities on that top 10 list. Kansas City, for example.
Top 10 list? There's a
top 10. Oh, there is. Different. But my point is, it's not so much that Democrats don't want help in fighting crime. I think Mayor Muriel Bowser would welcome that.
No, she decriminalized stuff.
She did not.
You guys passed a law in this city to decriminalize stuff.
Matter.
Ask your own cops. They're not actually
putting military on the streets in our cities does not solve crime or nor doesn't stop crime.
2 weeks, not one.
And you had several weeks without a murder and without the military. Stop it.
Scott,
the issue is not wanting crime.
Scott,
we want that help. We should want that help. What we don't want is to have a federal takeover unnecessarily to be a distraction to the Epstein discussion.
Oh my God!
And to create this narrative that has no empirical data
Point to Scott for trying to pivot. I'm going to give Aaron the last word, but Kurt, since you're on the messaging train here for your party.
Go ahead, Kurt.
I think that the key thing is that needs to be said is if you're okay with the president using executive power this way, and I remember being Republican where we were against executive power, we wanted limited government, not government overreach. Barack Obama had done this, we'd be using the word dictator. I remember those days. You better be okay with a Democrat president doing the same thing whenever he or she wants to.
That's true.
Okay with
I'll give you the last word.
True.
Two things. One, Kurt, you just said that you shouldn't be using the word dictator, and you said that Democrats would easily do that and Republicans would easily do it. Let's stay on the point here. But for you, I have a lot of respect for what you're saying. Yes, you,
okay,
Scott.
Right.
Yes,
Not you.
They're actually friends.
We are friends.
I'm going to give Aaron, I said I'd give Aaron the last word here.
But I will say this. I take your point that there could be other ways to do this. But you and I both know, in the world of comms and in the world of politics, if you are explaining, you're losing. Donald Trump is solving the crime problem right now in D.C. Look at the stats. Your point about how it could be done differently and esoterically,
should be done differently.
We can disagree.
And the National Guard are in the high crime areas.
I'm being nice to you.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Just to be clear, D.C. is to Kurt's point, I will say this. D.C. is a federal district. It is a unique situation.
Yes.
Federal enclave.
Okay, so just to be clear, there is a big difference between doing something in a city in America and D.C., which is a federal district carved out by the Constitution.
You know how TV works. You know, I got to go to break.
Exactly.
I know, but you know how it works. If I don't get my word in.
There we go. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Bardella out there in cyberspace. Thanks, buddy. Catch you in person soon. Appreciate you guys. All right, still to come. Other side of the break. For all the tension, all the stuff about policing, I'm going to show you an unbelievable story about a little kid and what happened when police came to the rescue. Other side of the break. Plus, what's trending when we return.
Care.
All right, Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up here on News Nation in 2 minutes. Will it launch SpaceX Starship? If it happens, Elizabeth will show it to you live. That's coming up 2 minutes right here on News Nation. All right, if you're just getting home and trying to catch up on the day's top stories, here's what's trending right now on thehill.com. This marathon cabinet meeting where the president floated the death penalty for D.C. murders. That was just one of the many headlines. I told you this was ping-ponging back and forth, and it's not going to stop. Court tosses Trump administration lawsuit against Maryland judges as it relates to Abrego Garcia. And you know this by now. Come on. Probably talked about this already. They're engaged. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Good for them. All the best. To catch these stories and more, all you have to do, download the app there on your screen or head on over to thehill.com. All right, so there's clearly been a lot of talk recently about keeping our streets safe. The big debate, should the National Guard be called in to help police or arguably take over for them? But speaking of calling in the police, I wanted to leave you tonight with a story that caught my eye and what happened after a 4-year-old called 911 to talk about swimming and soccer. This is young Micah from Farmington Hills, Michigan. He recently called 911. Thankfully, everyone was safe. No fire, no emergency, nothing. Micah just wanted to talk to someone about how much he loves swimming and soccer. Now, the misuse of 911 can result in heavy fines and even jail time in some instances. But instead of chastising Micah, or really his parents, the dispatcher realized what was going on, and a friendly chat about soccer soon kicked off. But that's not all. After a welfare check, of course, they got to make sure everything was okay, the Farmington Hills Police Department learned that it was Micah's brother's birthday. So the next day, a few cruisers sent over to deliver gifts. And Micah and Mitch, the brother, got to explore the patrol cars and meet the local police department. So for all the talk, all the conversations about policing in this country and crime and how to handle it, tonight I just wanted to spotlight what happened in Farmington, Michigan. The police department there, the folks, and good on them. Thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. Hope you have a great evening. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Elizabeth starts right now.
Breaking in 2